Thank you, everyone, for coming. My name is Bill. My call sign is W1WRA, and we're going to be doing a talk this evening about QSLing, the final courtesy, as it is sometimes referred to. And hopefully that's not going to be in the way. Move that there. Oh, it's from the hallway. Okay. Very good. So what is a QSL card? So QSL is a CW code, meaning I acknowledge the receipt of your message or your transmission. And a QSL card is basically a written confirmation or an acknowledgement of that contact that you made with another ham. And, why would you even send a QSL card? Again, it was commonly referred to back in the day as the final courtesy or in the final confirmation of your contact with the ham. Especially with the ham that you were rag chewing with, as opposed to a quick 5973 type of thing. So right over there. And so another reason why you'd want to collect QSL cards is paper chasing or award chasing. There's many awards that are out there from various organizations. Some are ARL sponsored awards. There are other organizations like CQ that sponsors some awards, and just various other places. There's also, there's awards for like Work All Maine, and the way you would prove that you worked all Maine is by collecting QSL cards from every county that you worked in Maine. Another reason why you might want to send a QSL card is just it's for fun. It's a long-standing amateur radio tradition that goes back to the beginning of the hobby. I tried to find a record of like when the first QSL card was sent and that kind of thing, and I couldn't really find anything solid and concrete other than to say it's been going on for about as long as radio's been going on. So, and basic QSL card, there are a bunch right in the front of the room. For those that might be on the camera, standard 3.5 by 5 inch postcard size card is a standard QSL card size. Some Europeans like using larger sizes, which sometimes make them harder to store with your other traditional size cards, but that's okay. But your basic traditional card that you would probably get to 3.5 by 5.5 inch postcard size card. And so here on the screen, for those here and online, is a more blown up version of what a standard card looks like. My background was white, so you can't really see the borders, but it's a card I got from K2AL. Looks like I got that back in last year. And so some things to note about the card is if you go on the top, it mentions the station that you're confirming the contact with, which would be me, W1WRA. It's got the date there, which was September 17th, it looks like, 2023 at 0047 UTC on 7 megahertz. And I got a 5.9, and that was in lower sideband. So it's the breakdown of a very basic QSL card. That's sort of the basic building blocks that you're going to want in your QSL card. There's all sorts of other information you can put in there. Obviously, below there, you're going to want your name and address. I'll get to that in a moment. But another important part of the card is right here down the bottom. Most cards will have that. There's a please QSL and a thanks that are listed there. You'll notice that in this card, there's an X box next to the thanks, meaning that that's a card that I received by a ham thanking me for the contact. The PSC is crossed out, meaning that he either does not want a card back, or he already got a card from me, and this is his thank you card to me. So if I was sending a card to someone who I made no contact with, or I should say, had no card from, I should say, if I'm initiating the QSL card to the station, I would actually put a checkbox next to that PSC or please and cross out the thanks. So it would say, please QSL. Hopefully the other station would get that card and be like, oh, I really send Bill a card back. But if you're sending one in return because you got a card, or for whatever reason you don't want another card back from the station, then you would send it as a thanks. And we'll look at a couple of cards. This slide show isn't very card heavy, because I'm actually going to be talking about the actual, there's lots of cards here if you'd like to look. I heard some disappointment in the crowd. There's a couple of pictures. But this is really going to be more about sending and receiving cards, which we'll get to in a moment. But in a card like this, it's important to look at the back of this card. There's a nice little note. Bill, thanks so much for the QSL card and the New Jersey QSO Party QSO. Nice QSL card. I guess you liked my card. See you next year or sooner. 73L, K2AL. And that's the other nice thing about the QSL cards. You know, a lot of times there's some pre-done boxes, but nice little personalizations like that on cards is very nice. Normally only takes a couple seconds to do, and kind of makes the person receive the card. It's kind of neat and special to kind of get a little something to read. And, you know, maybe it was a memorable QSO you had with someone, and you know, there might be some notes about what you talked about or whichever. Very good. And I will be getting that in a second. But yes, that did come in an envelope, because you will notice going back, we have a nice looking frontal card. We have some notes. Whoops. We have some notes that are on the back of the card, but we did not see the card actually get sent to me, because this one did actually come in an envelope. So before we go on too much, people are going to be able to say, well, Bill, do you have any cards? I do. They're not very fancy. I'm actually working on some new cards. But right now I actually have 4 different cards because I'll get some small batches made, and I'll make some large batches of what I'm going to call my nicer cards. So here are 2 of the cards, and they're actually up here on the board here. One's just kind of plain in black and white with the call sign and address information. And you'll notice that on that card, similar to the card that we just first looked at, all the information to fill out kill information is located on the front of the card, meaning I can take this card, flip it over, write somebody's name and address and stick a stamp on it, and send it to them. The next card is basically close to the same design, but in color. I didn't scan the back of that card, unfortunately, but all the QSL information is on the back of that card. And the other 2 cards that I tend to send out are over here, and they're up here. I know that my I'm blocking it a little bit, but I can probably maybe swing that over there. But you'll see, you know, we got the top one. You know, they're both very New Hampshire based. I always like when I get a card from anywhere, if that card kind of reflects a little bit from where that wherever might be. So, you know, here's a picture from a card that I got that's actually going to be in a couple slides from Michigan, that shows a picture of shows a picture of the a lake where the person's from, and that kind of thing. So I like to have you know, try to keep it a little bit local and to it. You'll notice that the top card, both cards, I have my ARL Life Member logo thing on, but the top card, the logo might be a little bit hard to see, but that's my that's a 1010 International logo. I've been doing a lot of 10-meter stuff. When I make a 10-meter contact, I like trying to send them my 1010 card, and I'll actually jot down my 1010 number in there in case they're collecting 1010 numbers, which you need to do for that club. But you know, those are my cards, and you know, the basic QSL information that you're going to need on a card. We just kind of went through it on that last thing I highlighted, but the station you contacted, the date, the time, and UTC, and that part's very important. Whenever you do any sort of amateur radio logging, you log everything in UTC. In fact, both sides should be logging everything in UTC, so that when I get a card from KE1G, who is in Alaska or France, he's in France. I might not know what the time zone is in France, and he might say that we talked in the middle of the night when I was sleeping and whatnot. So UTC time just keeps it standard for both sides. Also called GMT, Greenwich Mean Time. The other information you need on a basic QSL report is the frequency. Now, some people will put a band, some people will put the exact frequency. It doesn't necessarily matter. I'm an exact frequency type of person, but I log the exact frequency. So you might not get one from me that says 14 or a 20 M for 20 meters. It might say 14.313 megahertz, because that's how I've recorded it. And the signal report with a 5, 9 or whatever. And as I went over on the other thing, you should specify on the card if it's a QSL request, meaning you're sending it hoping to get a card back, or if it's a thank you card saying that there's no card needed to be sent back, either because you already got their card or you don't need their card. And so basic information that should be on your card. Well, you're gonna need your call sign. And this little sub-bullet's actually kind of important. This is really more for card checkers and whatnot. But if you have your name on your call sign rather on the front of your card, like KE8RRG does over here, it should also be on the back of the card. So that if you're trying to get your card checked for an award or whatever, when somebody's checking all the cards, they can just look at it and say, here's a card for W1WRA from KE3RRG. It's just a good habit to make sure that when you're making the card that your call sign, if it's on the front, it should always rather be on the side that the signal report stuff is on. If it's a one-sided card, it only needs to be on one side. But if it is a double-sided card, you do actually want to have it on the other side as well. And as far as other sort of required basic information that should be there is your location information, your address, city, state, county, and grid square. So some people, when they make ham radio contacts, they collect counties. So having your county listed on the card will be good for them if they're doing some sort of county award. And having your grid square card is also handy because a lot of people will collect grid squares. And some grid squares are rarer than others. My cards, I tend to put a 4-digit grid square on. Some people put 6. I would say pick whatever you'd like to use. I will say, generally speaking, people that are doing VHF and up contacts, so from probably 6 meters on up, especially on up, they may be a little bit more interested in the 6-digit grid square, especially when you get, say again? Or 10, yeah, maybe someone who's on 10 gigahertz might care about a 10-digit, but for card purposes, 4 digits is perfectly fine. I don't think I've ever card that I've received with more than a 6. So that's the basic information you should have on your card. Whoops, thing. And then, of course, you can put all sorts of optional information on your card. A lot of people put station information about their working conditions, the type of rig they may have had, their antenna they're using, and their output power. This is a newer one, but to me, relatively important, their email address. Maybe you want to email the person after the fact, and we'll get into, they should be able to find you in other ways, but email address on cards are getting a little bit more common these days. Some people put club memberships or organization memberships. Going back, you'll see on my cards, one of them I had both ARL and the 1010 International Club. Some people, I have cards from people that have like the straight Key Century Club. Just, all sorts of different clubs and organizations. If there's a particular club or organization that you're relatively active in, yeah, you might want to throw it on the card. Sometimes you might want to make multiple cards. Like I showed the example, I have one card that shows the 1010 stuff, but my other cards don't. These are just things to think of when you're doing card design. Another interesting thing, I don't normally do this, but previous call signs, that's actually kind of interesting because you may get a card from, and I'm just picking on this guy because he's handy, KE8RRG, but he may have had 2 or 3 other previous call signs, and he may actually be responding to you with one of those previous call signs. I've gotten cards like that before where if you look on the back, they'll have a list of their previous call signs, and they might circle the one that we're actually using for the confirmation that you're getting. So previous call signs could be handy. The reason why I don't put my previous call sign is I didn't do a lot of HF work before I got my vanity call. I was doing a lot of mostly VHF stuff, so I just don't normally put my call sign there. But for example, if I got a new vanity call today, I would sort of put my current call sign as a previous call sign in there. Some people like putting awards that they earned and that kind of thing on the cards. That's a little braggy, but some people will do that. And some cards are special event cards. Well, I got some on the side. So for example, this card's actually up on the table. I think I just picked this one because it was a nice, cool, very long call. DR6WUNDER. They were commemorating a special event. So this was their special event card. And you can see some searching and some rescue holes and whatnot. And if you look at the back of the card, You'll see that there's a little stamp here that says it's in, there we go. In memory of the mining accident in, I'm not going to try, Legend, on October 24th, 1963. So they were on site doing a special event commemorating, remembering that event that happened. And a new thing that I've been starting to see every now and again on the special event type thing are it's coming are cards from people doing POTA activations. So there we go. So there's the front of a card I got not too long ago. And what I like about the back of this card is that he has his basic information set up so that he has his where kind of blank, so he can write down which park he was actually at. So he can use this card generically whenever he does an activation somewhere. He'll just fill in the park information. In fact, it's even up in the VIA DA0534. But the where he actually describes what park that was. And I didn't scan this one, but another park card that I got recently is right here. And the neat thing about this particular card, if I can't really get it into view very well, I apologize. But the neat thing about this particular card is that it states that it was during the first day of actions for Park K10075. And 81 QSOs were made that day on October 22nd, 2023. So that's kind of a neat little, special eventy type of card. So, if you do event type stuff, having an event type card, could be neat. Certainly not required, by the way. I've sent out my normal card when I've done POTAs. I've just on the side wrote down, well, I was at park number K, whatever, and that is perfectly fine. Where can you get cards made? That's probably another pretty interesting question. The problem with answering this question is in the years that I've had cards made, a lot of the places I've had cards made don't make cards anymore. They retired. One of the places I've had cards made, they'll still print cards, but only for previous customers. And you give them your order number and they'll reprint that order. But what I did do is I listed a couple of suggestions of places where you can get cards over here. The top one is where I tend to get a lot of my cards made these days. It's a website called gggraphicsstore.com. One amateur radio store online recently started selling QSL cards. That's Gigaparts. We have some folks here that had some cards made via Gigaparts. Another place is KB3IFHQSLcards.com, another place that we've had some club members have some of theirs made. A good thing to do, I would say, is a lot of times on a card, it's very hard to see. It's not going to show well on this card. But a lot of times on the bottom of a card, it'll say who printed this card. This particular card was printed at QSLs.com. So, if you're not sure where to get a card printed, you can look at a card that you may have received, see where it was printed. Maybe you decide to get your card printed there. Or ask, friends, hey, you have some cards, where'd you get your cards made? If you don't have friends, you can check eham.net or Google and find out where you can have some cards made. Or you can print your own cards. There's a URL underneath there at radioqth.com where there's like a nice little form that you can fill out, and it actually prints you out a PDF file that you can print and cut. And I mentioned here too, you can even handwrite or print your own. I couldn't find, which is unfortunate, I couldn't find any that I had that were handwritten. I've received handwritten QSL cards. A lot of times it might be that I sent somebody a card and I might get a small little thing back saying, I'm sorry, I don't have a card, but here's my information, all kind of handwritten, and that's kind of neat. Here's an example of a card that's just printed on a piece of paper, but has all the QSL card information that one would need to make this a valid QSO card. And here's another one, which is not even like a standard size, but again, just a printed out piece of paper, but it's got all the important information in there. It's got his name, address, his grid, his county. It's got all the information needed if I wanted to try to use the card for something. But my suggestion is if you receive a card, don't have any, it is a nice gesture if you can send them something in the mail, even if you do just print something out. And go ahead, Bill.
Area.
That
Use the message area on the back for all the required information.
Yep, that I was going to mention as well. That's actually a good point, Bill. Bill just mentioned another thing that you can do is get a postcard from your area, maybe like a New Hampshire postcard, and as you're filling out the information, make sure that you have all the information that's required for a contact, so you don't need to actually print out a card. Or if they have an email address that's listed on the card, even just sending out an email saying, I appreciate the card, I've received the card, I don't have a card at this time. It's a boo, but it is nice for the person. It is nice for the person that sent the card, getting some sort of confirmation, even if they don't get a card back, even if it's not usable, that in fact at least somebody got the card and is enjoying the card and whatnot. So there are multiple ways to send cards. The obvious way would be direct QSLing. So sending a QSL card. So I listed a couple of websites where people can verify QSL information, name and address and whatnot. But the one that most people use, quite frankly, is QRZ.com. And so what I would suggest doing is if you haven't, I know I know I do, I'll log into my QRZ account, make sure everything's accurate and so on and so forth. You don't need to make the big biography, but you want to make sure that your top section of your QRZ page is accurate with your accurate mailing address and whatnot. But another thing that you should do, there's two things you should do. Number one, I don't think I mentioned it on here, but include your email address. Very, very important, because this talk does not talk about any sort of electronic QSLing. I do electronic QSLing, and some of the ways that the programs I use do the electronic QSLing is it'll go to QRZ.com, and if there's an email address, it'll automatically fill out this nice little electronic QSL card and email it to the address. That can't happen if your email address isn't there. Your address may look odd. There may be questions about the address. So having the email address in there gives a way for someone to contact you and maybe verify some of that information before they send a card. But as I also mentioned on that top bullet, you don't want to just verify their mailing address information. You want to verify their QSL information. And what I mean by that is some people on their QRZ page will say no paper cards. And so you can send them a paper card, but you're not going to get a paper card back from them. People say only electronic cards. Some people say, they'll say all sorts of things. But the idea is you do want to check the QSL information they have there, especially for foreign stations. Some foreign stations may say things like, and I'll get to this in a couple of slides, but some foreign stations say, I do not use a QSL bureau at all. Do not send cards through the bureau, send directly or whatever. And I'll get to that in a couple of seconds, but you want to verify both their address and their QSL information because they may have some specific requests. I don't know why that did that. So, as Dennis pointed out kind of earlier when I was showing a card, so there's a couple different ways you can mail cards. One is you can mail it just like a postcard. So you can fill out all your contact information from the radio contact on the front, flip it over and write their address and throw a postage postcard stamp on it. But that may damage the card. So here's that guy I was picking on earlier, KE8RRG. What a beautiful looking card, except for the fact that the USPS do its own artistic flare to the skyline there and whatnot. And this is not, I guess he goes by Mac. This is not Mac's fault. And even the back of the card, gets a little bit, could get a little bit gunked up or whatever. It could be patina, sure, but you know, but that can happen when you send a card through the mail like a postcard. It could get a little bit damaged. So the other way that you can send the cards is in an envelope. Now, when you do that, you can send since you already have an envelope and you're already sticking a card in it. You can choose to include a self-addressed stamped envelope or even just a self-addressed envelope in the card. What I've found is that, and this is mostly for domestic cards, by the way, but if you include a self-addressed envelope, the chances that you'll get a response back will increase a lot because the guy doesn't have to go and find a stamp and buy a stamp. You gave him an envelope. If he has a card, you can just scribble the information on it, stick it in the envelope, stick it in the mail, and you got your card. So,
Bulgarian postage?
oh, I'm not. But there is a but about that, and that is the current U.S. postal rates. And the current U.S. postal rates are, as of February, because stamps just went up again. Standard stamp, 68 cents. Postcard stamp is 50 cents. And an international stamp is $1.55. So if I wanted to send a card directly to someone in Germany, that's it's going to be at least $1.55. I say at least because we'll get to that in a moment. Because many international people will that you send cards directly to will require what they'll call green stamps. They're going to want they want cash. They want 2 or 3 US dollars put in the envelope to cover their postage back to you. I don't really talk about it in the slide, but I'll divert for a second. So back years ago, you used to be able to go to the US Post Office and you used to say, hi, I would like to buy an IRC, an international reply coupon. And the person would look at you like you had 4 heads and have no idea what you're talking about, which happened to me many times, which is why I got to become friends with the Post General when I lived down in Drake, Massachusetts, because they knew what an international reply coupon was. And what that was is it cost about the same as a stamp. It was a physical little, and I should have brought some old ones. I have some expired ones, but you know, physical little like piece of paper that somebody could use in their country of origin. They would take that little slip to their local post office, give it to the postmaster, and they would give them an international stamp to send back to wherever. And that was good because now back when you're QSLing back in the day, you know, you didn't want to try to keep stamps for Germany and Russia and England or whatever. But if you have a stack of IRCs, you can include an IRC and they could have redeemed it locally for international postage and send it to you. But as of, was it 2008? I think it was, the United States no longer sells IRCs. So I didn't really want to get into it too much, but it's interesting to note they exist. Some countries still use and receive IRCs, but that list is dwindling. So I probably wouldn't really go down the IRC route, just kind of a nice little aside to mention. One last aside about IRCs is, has anyone heard of a Ponzi scheme? Yeah, Mr. Ponzi was selling IRCs. That was his thing. He would buy them low in one country and sell them high in another. And that is the classic Ponzi scheme. So, okay, so let's say I wanted to email or I'm sorry, physically mail a QSL card to a station I just made contact with. So I'm going to look them up on QRZ. That's their QRZ page, SP6AXW. And might be a little hard for people here to see, but under the QSL information, it says direct, logbook of the world, no bureau. So I'm not going to send the card to the bureau because he, for whatever reason, maybe doesn't participate or whatever it is bureau. If I wanted to get a card back from him, I'm going to have to send him a card directly. When I looked through his QRZ page, he didn't mention the need for any extra green stamps or any additional postage on return. So in this case, I would just spend $1.55, put that in an envelope, send it off to him in Poland, and hope that I get a response back. Here's another ham I made a contact with recently, OZ2RZ, Yuri. And so we look at QSL information. It might be hard to see in the back. It says no QSL manager, QSO via bureau or direct. Aha. So he mentions that instead of sending him an email directly, I can send him a message through the bureau, which we will be getting back to. And by the way, you'll actually on his page, it says, please, no IRCs. He does not want IRCs. You'll also notice right above that, I don't know if I highlighted it or not, but right above that, it'll say all QSL cards received direct with sufficient postage of $3 USD and a self-addressed envelope will be answered back the same week. So for him, I got two choices. I can spend $1.50 from a stamp, put another envelope in the envelope, and we're going to put it in with my address already on there, and slip in 3 crisp $1 bills, and he'll send me back a card, hopefully. So now that's what, 3, so $4.55 to get that card. I actually did highlight it that he wants money. And yesterday I made a contact with the ham, and a couple minutes later I got an email with the subject of QSL card, and I'm like, this guy know I'm making a slideshow? And English Suave second language for Luca, but for those who can't see it, says, hello, dear radio operator. Sorry for the disturb. My name is Luca. I'm a 15-year-old and youngest ham operator in Austria. I didn't fact check that, but I'll believe him. It says, thank you very much for the QSO. Please send me your QSL card. Very 73 from Luca, OE8DDX. And so I thought, that's very cool. And yes, I do want to send Luca a card. So what should I do? I should probably look on QRZ to see how I can send him a card. And you can see a very happy picture of Luca up there with his DXCC and a whole bunch of different QSL cards behind him. But it says up there, QSL via bureau or direct. And there it is again, QSL via the bureau. So what the heck is that? What does that mean? How am I going to QSL Luca so Luca can get his QSL card from me? So we get to talk about the bureaus. There are 2 bureaus. There is a outgoing QSL service bureau, and there is an incoming. And as the name suggests, if I had a card that I wanted to send to Luca, I'm going to send it via the, or potentially send it via the outgoing QSL service that the ARRL runs. And if Luca sends me back a card, the card actually does not go to the ARRL. It'll go to the incoming bureau, which I'll get to in a moment. So let's talk about the QSL card bureau. One potentially bummer, depending on your point of view about it, is that you need to be an ARRL member, ARRL member, to use the outgoing QSL bureau. And here is the rate structure for the outgoing QSL bureau. So if you have 10 cards or fewer in an envelope, it's going to cost you $2. You got 11 to 12 cards, it's $3. And anything over than that, they charge you 21 cards or more, it's 75 cents per ounce in the package. So it's actually a fair deal when you start breaking down the math. So oh, I didn't realize I had a stupid transition on this page, but so this is actually from their website, an example they use. So if you had a package of cards that was 1.5 pounds, approximately 225 cards, it's going to cost you $18 plus whatever the charge it would cost you to get those cards to the outgoing bureau. So if you're to do it directly, 225 cards at 155 cents a stamp, that'd be $348.70. And that's just for the actual postage. Start counting all those green stamps you have to throw into a lot of those cards. I mean, it can get very, very expensive very quickly if you wanted to send a lot of cards overseas. But not so much with the outgoing QSL bureau, which is why it exists. So the way you use the outgoing QSL card bureau is you grab your cards, whether it's 2 or several hundred, you start pre-sorting all the cards by the call sign prefix. So your AP would be at the beginning of the list, your CEs, your DLs, all the way on. The numbers are at the end of the stack. So if you work a 5N or a 9Y, they'd be at the end, not the front of the stack. The Bureau doesn't want you to do any sort of separations via paper clips or rubber bands. They don't want you to rubber band all your cards going to England together and all your cards. It's much more work for them. They just want a nice big pre-sorted pile. When you send your package to the ARL, whether it's an envelope filled with 10 cards or a box filled with many, they want you to include proof of your ARL membership, which if you go on the ARL website and log in, you can actually just print out your membership. That's plenty good. They want your email address and they want the package weight. So what I normally do is I print out my my membership card and I write on that printout my email address, what the package weighs and whatnot. And they want you to enclose the check that you need to make to the ARRL outgoing QSL services we make the check out to. Take all that and you mail it to the ARL outgoing QSL Bureau right there in Main Street, Newington, Connecticut at the ARL headquarters. Oh, actually, you know what? Because of transitions, I don't want to go back, but I should have pointed out on that first picture, which showed a picture bureau, it showed a picture of the actual ARL QSL Bureau. There are tables with just stacks and stacks of mail slots. So what's going to happen is they're going to get your bundle. They're going to open it up. It's going to be nicely and correctly pre-sorted by you. So they're just going to start going through and all of the mail slots are in there. So they're just going to go through and start filling up mail slots down the way there. QSL Bureau, they can't forward stamps. They can't forward cards and envelopes. They can't forward cash. They can't forward IRCs. They're going to mail just your card. That's all they want. Anything else, they're not going to mail. They do have an 800 number. There's bureau@arl.org, spelt oddly, by the way, BURO@arl.org. And there's a whole website on the ARL website talking about the outgoing QSL service, where a lot of this information was obtained. So once I got that request from Luca, I did have a stack of cards I needed to send out, and luckily he sent his request before I did. So I got his card all ready, and I weighed it. So you want a scale that's relatively accurate. That's actually just a food scale, and so. And by the way, if you don't have a scale, if you bring a stack of cards to the post office, don't put it in the package. But if you give them the stack of cards and say, "Can you please tell me how much this weighs?" They'll typically do it, especially if you ask them friendly with a nice smile. But that scale that I have is relatively accurate, and so that bundle that I sent to the outgoing bureau yesterday weighed 15.5 ounces. So 15.5 ounces. So how many cards was it and how much did it cost me? Well, that 15.5 ounces happened to be 114 cards. When I, by the way, that was for voice contacts that I chose, DX voice contacts that I chose to QSL because I didn't QSL all of them that were voice contacts from October through December of last year. So 3 months, and I didn't do everybody. I didn't do any of my digital contact. I might get to them later, but those were some of the voice contacts I decided I wanted to get QSL cards from. So I rounded up my weight to 16 ounces. So at 75 cents an ounce, that ended up meaning I wrote a check for $12 to the ARL outgoing bureau, put it all into a nice little box, sent it first class mail. That cost $9.50 for a grand total of $21.50. There you go. Versus if I did the 114 cards at $1.55, that's $223.20, and that doesn't include any of the return postage requirements that many DX stations have and whatnot. So, but again, you're talking an order of magnitude. You're talking, 21 versus $223. So. Nope. Can you jump ahead? ARL outgoing bureau, you pay as you give them stuff to send out. We're talking about one way. We will be talking about the other way in just one moment. But this is to get your cards out of the country. So I hear a lot of arguments of like, oh, my ARL membership, that's not worth it. It's just QST, and now they're even charging me for that. I'm a life member, but even if I weren't, that paid for my membership for the year for sending out those 114 cards. And if I do that multiple times in a year, then that's there you go. And that's on top of all the other benefits ARL provides. So we talked about how to get your cards out of the country. Well, Luca in Austria hopefully will be sending me a card back. And so how is that card going to come back to me? Well, that's going to come back via the incoming QSL bureau. So the incoming QSL bureau is handled by call sign section. So there's a 0 incoming, a 1, a 2, blah, blah, blah. Hawaii has their own, Alaska, Puerto Rico, Virgin Islands, and Guam all have their own incoming QSL services. And cards are sent directly to the appropriate incoming bureau, but it's done by your call sign number. So if you live in New Hampshire and you have a non-1 call sign, your cards are not going to be coming here locally. They're actually going to be going to the 4 region call sign place. Not a big deal, but they'll eventually sort it and they'll eventually get it to you, but it'll be mailed from wherever their cards are. So I'll pick on Paul because I saw him in here earlier, KF4TPY. Since he's a 4, even though he lives in the 1 call section, his call sign's a 4. So any incoming cards he has, and we're going to the 4 call bureau. By the way, if he decides to change his call to a vanity call in the 1 area, then his new cards will come to the local 1 area. And this is a very important part. Unlike the outgoing bureau, you need to be an ARL member. The incoming bureau, you do not need to be an ARL member to receive incoming cards from bureaus. So locally, our bureau is the W1 QSL bureau. And their website's at www.w1qsl.org. They're sponsored by the Yankee Clipper Contest Club, which, by the way, in our area is probably one of the larger contesting clubs. If you have a very, doesn't have to be a deep, if you have an interest in contesting, you should check out the Yankee Clipper Contesting Club. The W1 QSL incoming bureau is staffed by 40 ham radio volunteers. They typically will bundle up all the cards that they have and send them out to you 3 times a year. And each year they process 70,000 cards. That's just the 1 bureau. That's not all the bureaus. So 70,000 cards per year roughly are coming in from overseas into stations that have a 1 in their call sign here in the States. Yes.
You'll probably cover it later, but I'd be interested in how that compares to Logbook of the World.
So the question that Dennis had was, how does that compare to Logbook of the World? You should have seen what version 1 of this presentation looked like, because I was interleaving a lot of paper and electronic. This is just paper. I'm thinking about doing an electronic QSLing because the other thing is there's multiple ways to electronically QSL. Logbook of the World is one of the main ones, but there's a bunch of other ones that are used. So I don't have Logbook of the World statistics handy. But the way the incoming bureau works is they sell credits. They don't keep self-addressed envelopes like that. You just buy credits from them, and they do that because it's easier for them to track. They can use the exact postage because they're going to be weighing the mail as they send it to you. So there's no waste. And they suggest that you can start as easy as sending them $5 to fund your account. Actually, I'll pause here. Earlier today, I was talking with John, KB1ICL, and he's like, you know what? He's like, I just got this in the mail. Was it this week? There you go. Yeah. So we got a card in the mail this week, and it's from the W1 QSL Bureau. Isn't that kind of funny? A lot of things work in our favor for my QSL talk this month. And so it's from the W1 QSL Bureau, gives their address, and it's addressed to KB1ICL, and it has a date of sometime last month. And it says, you have 2 DX QSL cards. They're sitting at the Bureau waiting for you. And it's a lot of the information I was just kind of giving you of this is how to give us money and find out more information on how to get your cards. And they mentioned over here, by the way, that this was the first notice that they sent to John. And then there's a box here that says second notice, and it says this is the second and final notice. Please send funds or we must destroy the DX QSL cards. They're not going to hold on to those cards forever for you. If you have some cards, first of all, question number one, well, do I have any cards? Well, John shows us that if you do, they will probably contact you to say, we have your cards, because they want you to have your cards.
Email.
There you go. So W1SNH got an email notification, which they probably got from your QRZ page, which you should always have your email address on your QRZ page. So they'll try to contact you, email or post a mail or whatnot. They want you to get your card, but they're not going to hold on to it forever. They are good about holding on to it, but yeah, so it is interesting. So if you're wondering, if you have any cards in the incoming bureau, if you've never used it, they will try to notify you, even if they don't have an email address, they'll notify you by postal mail that in fact you do, and they want to see you get your card. They don't want to destroy your card. And this actually talks about how to fund your account, which is actually also on the card that he got. So you can go to their website, and they actually have a little PayPal button where you can PayPal them some money, or you can make them a check payable to the W1 QSL Bureau, and they have a PX in Marlborough, Massachusetts. And they also have a nice, interesting charging thing. They charge, so it's 10 cents out of the gate. Plus they charge 10 cents per ounce, plus actual postage. And then basically go up in 10-cent increments up until they reach 10 ounces. After 10 ounces, they're not going to charge you more than $1.10 as a fee, but you are in all these cases have to pay the actual shipping. So I found an old envelope. I didn't bring it. I think I had a card, a package that had like 12 cards in it, and I think the actual postage on it was something like it was like $1 or under $1. So it would have been like $1 plus probably the 20 to 30 cents, depending if it made it over the 1 ounce weigh-in mark. Yeah.
Another reason to go to Camp Expo is that they have a booth there and you can pick up your card, because they found me and said, we got a pile of cards, so. You know,
There you go. If you bump into the sorting people, maybe they'll have your cards for you. But there you go. And there was just a little something. I'm not really going to so much get into this, but this basically just says that there's a bunch of teams that do this all volunteer, and they send out cards 3 times a year. And you can also check the account status of your account. If you log into their website and put in your call sign, and if you have an account, it'll say how much postage you have on file. It'll also say how many cards that you actually have waiting for you that'll be sent out the next time they send out cards. Again, they only send out 3 times a year. And again, their website is W1QSL.org. And if you ever have any questions for the incoming bureau, it's W1QSL at W1QSL.org. Just about that, by the way. Display and storage of your cards. So, you got a bunch of cards. HRO sells a display of sleeves that you can kind of cards into and hang on the wall. It says it holds 40 cards, but it's 40 cards front and back. So in my opinion, it holds 20 that you can see if you had it on a wall. 20. If you do searches online, you can find all sorts of different ways to display your cards. Some people, if they get a particular memorable card or some cards, they might frame them. I had started doing this once and stopped, but I may actually resume scanning in a bunch of my cards on my computer, so I can sort of have them all electronically and be able to kind of look at them that way. You can put in an electronic photo frame. I think Eric has done that. He had scanned in some of his, has one of those photo frames that you can put a bunch of images on. It'll just kind of cycle through. You can probably also do that for awards if you see your awards fly through. What I normally do is I have these index card boxes, because again, those are standard index card size. You can get them at like Staples or whatever, but I just keep a lot of mine in an index card box so they don't get lost and whatnot. And I try to separate them by letter so I can find if I'm looking for whatever. Or be creative. We can do all sorts of stuff with it, I suppose. But that's a couple of suggestions. And so I'm basically at the end. So the summary is, paper QSLing. It's a long time tradition. it's certainly alive and well. Like I said, the incoming bureau for just the one section did 70,000 income cards. I forget what the statistic is for the bureau for their outgoing, but I read somewhere they send pallets of mail per year. So you can figure out that that's a whole bunch. You know, direct cards will have a better chance of getting a return if you have a self-addressed sent envelope, if you're doing some domestic stuff. I didn't really talk about this too much, but direct cards will get a faster response. This is kind of interesting. You know, when I get packages from the incoming bureau, I may sometimes get a card in there that's, you know, 3, 4, 5. But I think my record is 10 years old. So sometimes I'll get a card from a contact I made 10 years ago. For who knows what reason. Maybe the person finally decided to start sending out some cards. Maybe they decided they want to start chasing counties and I'm a county that they need. Who knows why? But when you send a card directly to someone, you'll typically get a response faster. If you're going to use the bureau, it's not always going to take you years, but you never know. It could take years. Another quick thought is, you know, you save cash, utilize a QSL bureau. The outgoing bureau, you can save a ton of money sending cards out overseas that way, as I demonstrated earlier. And the incoming bureau, you can actually get the cards a lot cheap as well. So
That 10-year guy, that was legal.
might have been, maybe finally just woke up from hibernation. So there you go. So that's sort of my my quick rundown. Maybe quick rundown on paper QSLing. Don't want to have any questions. I want to before I field questions. I'd like to say I want to try to keep the questions paper QSL related if we can. I mean, I can answer some electronic questions, and I'm thinking about doing an electronic thing. But and if you really have a burning electronic question, you can ask. But I'll repeat it. So Ryan has a question. Go ahead, Ryan. Okay, so and that's an interesting thing. I didn't really want to so much get into that during the presentation, but certainly that's a great question. Ryan's question was about paper QSLing and shortwave radio listening. Now, scanning the room, I see KC1TLY, a newer ham and a newer member of the club, but certainly someone who is not new to shortwave radio QSLing. The practice was certainly a lot greater years ago, but then again, so is shortwave radio broadcasters. But a lot of broadcasters will give QL information. Normally, they want you to mail in or email in a signal report. Typically, besides just a signal report, by the way, and you can give it to them in a classic ham terminology, you know, 5955. But there's a shortwave people use a thing called a SNIPO, SNIPO way to actually describe the received signal. You can Google SNIPO to understand what the SNIP and O are. But normally you want to give them that, and you normally want to give them some programming information heard. You know, if you're going to QSL Radio Romania International, you're going to want to say, you know, I was listening on February, whatever today is, 9th, at whatever UTC. I was listening to this program name and maybe mention a couple things that you heard in the program. And a lot of places will still send paper QSLs. I will say some broadcasters are doing electronic only, some do hybrid. But the other thing too is there are a lot of shortwave radio stations that rebroadcast other people's programs. And so sometimes you can actually send a QSL report to a program, not to the station. So, you know, you might hear a WaveScan is a program that's on multiple shortwave radio programs. And that's a program actually talking about listening to shortwave radio. And so they have QSL information. You might send them a direct QSL saying, hello, WaveScan, I heard you on this station at this time with this signal report. I heard this stuff on the show. And you might get a QSL card from them as opposed to from the broad station. So not as alive and well as it used to be, but you can still certainly get paper QSL. And by the way, I mentioned broadcast stations. I have sent paper QSL confirmations to utility stations and other thing broadcast. And yeah, well, I've also, I've QSL WWV. So WWV will oftentimes have an experimental signal on 25 megahertz. It's not considered one of their normal time signals. And it only is at, I think it's, I don't remember if it's 1,000 or 2,500 watts. It's not the normal 10,000 watts. And it's way up high at 25 megahertz. So it's considered an experimental signal. They recently brought that back on the air. I sent them a reception report and got a really cool paper WWV card. So yes, Dennis.
Very flexible.
So
Similar time.
yeah, so I didn't want to mention that during the thing, but yes, so paper QSLing is actually collecting, and just generally speaking is a very it's a thing. I've actually bought some QSL cards. I didn't bring any of those ones here. My only, and by the way, earlier tonight, I went on PayPal, not PayPal, eBay. Went on eBay and did a quick search for New Hampshire QSL cards. And there's a number of them that I found from the 30s and 40s, and people are wanting $6 a piece for one QSL card that a ham did, who was probably passed away a lot from estate sales. But old QSL cards are actually very collectible and could be worth money, both ham or shortwave. The one thing I will mention is if you did want to start getting into that kind of collecting, be very, very careful, especially if cards are from the 1960s timeframe, because in the 1960s, CB was a licensed service, and sending CB QSL cards was a very big thing. And you don't want to pay a bunch of money expecting to get ham radio cards and end up with a bunch of CB cards. You might get bummed out. You might not, but just a thing that the 60s, maybe even into the early 70s, CB QSLing was also a thing, and beware. Did you have something? I'll get to you in a second. Did you have something, Ralph? Or oh,
Bunch of cards from the sixties, traditionally on eBay are around 40.
yeah, some of them are very, very collectible. So, which I don't quite get, but I also don't get why baseball cards are kind of expensive. But so that also goes to show, by the way, any QSL cards that you get, hold on to them. You might be able to throw them on eBay someday or something. Let's see. First, I saw Steve. I'm gonna go down because go ahead, Steve.
QSL night, 3 times a year, about 25 of us.
So anyone team mentioned the Neshoba Valley Club meets 3 times a year to do club sorting for W1WRA, I assume. And so you're a card sorter. There you go. So we have a card sorter in the room. So Steve was probably bored to tears. But there you go. So 3 times a year they get together at the Neshoba Valley and do some card sorting, and then it never does it, I'm sure. And then those cards eventually go from Steve's hands to our hands. Tim, did you have something?
But you answered some of them. I have a scale, if any of you guys ever want to mail something like that. It's coming.
I'll bring my palette.
Yeah, I can't weigh a pallet, but yeah, I do have a scale. Just come and visit me and I'll weigh your box of cards or whatever it is for you. And do they use media mail was one of my questions, because that's a little cheaper. I know when we go book.
Oh, I forget, because normally I'm already giddy that I've saved all sorts of money. I don't normally look to see what kind of mail that comes back in.
No,
And put it this way, if it's about 20 cards or fewer, it'll just come in a regular envelope. It's not unless you get a bigger bunch. Actually, do you? Yeah, so he sorts, so do you stuff them in envelopes, or are you just sorting them into, so they sort them? So yeah, so I'm not sure. Next time I get a bundle in, I can let you know. But sometimes if you got 20 or fewer cards, they'll just come in a regular envelope.
Do they stamp the card, or do they put it like you said before they put an envelope, do they stamp it or put anything on it to?
Nope, you're just gonna, you'll get an envelope or a package with a list of your pre-sorted cards. I'm trying to remember, I think a lot, well, that's not a hard fast rule. Sometimes they're in order, but they don't have to be, but no, you'll just get a package of some sort with a bunch of your cards. And normally on the back of your envelope, although I mentioned you can look online, but normally on the back of the envelope, they'll actually print and put what your remaining balance is on your account. So if it gets a little low, you can go online or send them a check to make sure you have a balance, or get a card like John got that says they have your cards, and if you want them, you're gonna want to fund your account.
So it's worth giving them some dough to just.
Yeah, and again, they suggest, they're not looking for a lot of money. They can, $5. If you please with John's 2 cards, if you can probably give them $2. That'll be more than enough to get those 2 cards. But he may want to get some more cards in the future, so he may give them 5, and then the next time they get cards, they'll just come to them in the mail one day, and I'm like, oh, neat.
Everything take payment.
PayPal or check.
Thanks, Bill.
Yep, no
Thanks
problem.
for giving the talk tonight too. I get a bunch of stuff out of it.
Yep, no problem. It's those same topics where, I've been QSLing for like 20 something years. So, but I know we have some newer hams in the group, and we have some newer upgrades who have upgraded. General may not have done a lot of QSLing, and they may have looked and be like, I don't want to spend $1.55 to send a card somewhere. And the guy wants a few bucks to get a card back. That saw the math. That can get very, very pricey, but utilizing the bureau, you can get a bunch of cards a lot less expensive. Oh, was there another question? Oh, I'm sorry. Sure. Sorry, Gene.
Not the question, but the comment that, first of all, if we start talking about all the aspects of a paper QSLing, they'll probably end up with their 65 hours nonstop. But I would to add one quite important trick, which can save you a lot of money and increase your throughput. Maybe you heard about a now working service called Global QSL. It was an Israeli company which were printing cards for you and mailing them to the QSL bureaus, but they disappeared, but they were replaced by the service by Deutsche Amateurradio Club, which is a really great deal if you have more than few cards to send via the bureau. Just Google DARC QSL service. And by the way, if you see the QR code on the card, most likely it was printed there. For about 10 cents a card, they will not only print your card, but mail it to the QSL bureau or to the member of DARC. So I discovered this service when I had about 5,000 unanswered QSL cards after the contests. And this is the really, really money saving and more important time saving thing, because as I said, for 10 cents, they print you the high quality card and mail it for you.
There you go. Very good. So there's another, and what was it called again?
DARC.
Yep. So if you Google the DARC and their QSL service, there's another one. I think I've actually gotten some cards that were sent that way. I just didn't pay very close attention. It's a good another way to send a bunch of cards cheap.
So my question was around electronic logging. No, just really the question I had is that you obviously get a QSL card with your confirmation on it. What happens when you look at your log and the information that you have in your log doesn't match what they physically wrote on the QSL card? Is that like the de facto standard that you should be matching against, or is it just kind of a reference or a kind of afterthought? True, you could do that, but I'm just curious. Is like
Well,
it used to be
the biggest thing that I do is I do verify that I did make contact with the person. That's the biggest thing. And I would say as long as the date and time is right. If the signal report is slightly off, I'll give the best. But if they say I talked to you on January 1st at 00 UTC on 15 meters phone, and that matches, and I said 5.5 and he wrote 5.9, whatever. I'll write my report.
You got confirmed offline with the cards really kind of just more nostalgia.
Yeah, I mean, the one of my big points with the whole talk is really to sort of reiterate, I guess, the fact that, so for some of the hams that have been in well, actually, I'll go to Bill first and then I'll mention, go ahead.
Will occasionally get a card for that month when you were in a coma. Certainly you will get cards that are not in your blog.
You will, and for those logs, I
Some
don't.
of those are honest mistakes and some of them aren't.
That is true, which is why, like I said, at a very minimum, I verify that I made contact with the station and that the information is, you know, fairly accurate. If the time's a little off or whatever, but, you know, if they said we did a voice contact on a particular band on a particular day and we did, and it's, you know, pretty close, yes, they get a card. But if they said they contacted me and I have no record, they don't get a card back.
This is
Um,
another one of those instances where having your email findable is really useful.
That's actually a good.
I have gotten cards for call signs that I have never worked, but I emailed the guy and told him, hey, sorry, I didn't find you in the log, and we could try to figure out what happened. So.
Excellent. Yeah, very good. So there's another argument, or not argument, but another reason why having your email address, particularly on your QRZ page, because that's the de facto standard that most people will go to, is helpful because for reasons just like Jeff said, you know, if there's a question or some confusion, you can email the person and try to figure things out. So, but yeah, and to wrap up again, it was really I do. Full disclosure, I do most of my confirmations electronically these days. But I still do a fair amount of paper QSLing. It's a really neat tradition of the hobby. It's certainly not a dead part of the hobby. You know, like I said, 70,000 through the one bureau alone. You know, the ARL sends out tons. So just wanted to make some newer hams aware, or newer upgraded hams aware of some easy ways to use the bureau to save some money, maybe even refresh some longer time hams that maybe haven't QSL'd in a while. So, but if there's no other questions, I'm gonna wrap things up and